Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has issued a marching order to the Federal Executive Council and with one word, crash food prices urgently. The directive focuses on safe passage of farm produce, cutting logistics costs and empowering rural cooperatives.
Now, the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, disclosed this on Wednesday at a capacity-building workshop for Senate correspondents in Abuja. But will this be another policy pronouncement that fades or a turning point in Nigeria's fight against food inflation? Join us this morning for this discussion is economist and development expert, Dr. Aliyu Ilias. A warm welcome to you and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central, Dr. Ilias.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now let's start with the directive itself. I mean, we do understand that Nigeria operates a free market economy. What do you make of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's pronouncement to the Federal Executive Council saying food prices must crash in economic terms? How do you interpret such a pronouncement? Is it even possible?
Right. I think it's a good one for the president to say that they should crash the prices. But I'd like to take your mind back to 2023. Specifically August 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu declared state of emergency on food security. And with that, we have not seen major difference. So we're also looking at this with cautious optimism, simply because if you look at even Nigerian inflation, the inflation is actually decelerating, while the food component is accelerating. And if you look at the food basket, basket of inflation, food is about 52%. So food is a major problem in Nigeria. And if you also look at the Nigerian populace, we expend over 65% of our income on food. So it's what is urgent that the president needs to do. But the thing is he going to actually reflect what he actually said? That's what we need to look into critically.
Okay, looking at it critically, I mean, the government is targeting logistics and not forgetting to also looking at safe passage of farm produce across transportation routes. Notwithstanding too, they're also looking at ensuring that food can just be possibly everywhere. And we do understand the insecurity challenges that the farmers are faced with. But let's look at it from the economic aspect. Should this happen, what will this do, especially to the resellers, those who are just at the forefront of ensuring that the prices remain the same? Because what we see now, Doctor, is that when the produce do leave the farm, before they get to the consumers, the price levels changes from different areas, from point A to point B. How do we ensure that with this directive, the price point, or better still, while the food is being moved, the prices would likely not be too high for Nigerians to purchase or buy?
Right. The price of products or food prices in Nigeria is a function of the economy, status of the economy in Nigeria. There's one thing that is critical that we must look at critically. It is what we call food supply chain. So what is supply chain? Supply chain simply means the movement of food commodities from the farmers down to the consumer. So what happened in between is what we call logistics. So these are the things President needs to come in to actually work on. I can tell you practically that farmers who produce food, maybe in Kebbi, a bag of onion, for instance, it can be maybe 50,000 naira. Transporting such commodity down to Abuja, to Lagos, to other places, it becomes double or triple simply because of the supply chain problem. But when we talk about supply chain, what actually brings about this supply chain problem? It's the cost of transportation. And what brought about cost of transportation is because of removal of fuel subsidy. You recall that government has actually put a lot of things in place, but they are not enough. What have they put in place? One is CNG. I can tell you for my car, I tried to convert my car because I want to have more purchasing power, because I want to have more disposable income in the last 9 months.
Yes, Doctor, you there?
Go ahead, please.
At the cost of about 950,000, hoping that to actually have.
Sorry, we lost you there for a second. Sorry. You said you decided to convert your car. So what happened?
Right. I'm actually saying that I converted my car to CNG because I want to have more purchasing power. Now, if I now go to the queue now, for the past 4 months, I've decided not to go there again, but it will take me about 4 hours, which is about 1 hour. The same thing is happening to agricultural produce. When government said they are going to provide alternative to transportation, that simply means that a farmer, if he can transport that food, using CNG, to the consumer, it's much more reduced. So until government look at that supply chain area and look at the cost of transportation, which is the major problem now, it is the problem. So it is not the food that is that expensive, but the cost of transporting it. And that's why I said energy security means a lot. So to have food security as President said in 2003, perhaps let me also bring about this also. To have food sufficiency, government must also work alongside the state, the subnationals, because the real farmer is subnational, and that's when he declares the emergency. Then some of us are saying that you have to do all-round season farming to have that food sufficiency, and you have to work on transportation. So these are the things that they must make sure they put in place. And can also take you back to past government of the President Jonathan. You recall that Akiwumi Additional was the minister. There's a way he actually helped in terms of provision of fertilizer and what have you. You also recall that during President Muhammad Buhari, there's also what we call anchor borrower. Most of those things have been eroded. Though I read that President is developing, they call it farmer head something scheme that they're actually looking at. Until they are intentional, that's when we can have food sufficiency in Nigeria.
Now, Doctor, Nigerians watching this at the moment will be excited. If we could realistically put a timeline as to when we would begin to see this reduction in the price of food, because the survey done by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics says a lot of households spend majority of their money on food. So food is very important. Is very important in the lives of Nigerians and also their disposable income. If we could put a timeline to this, realistically, when do we expect to start seeing, a drop in prices of food if the government does the things that it says it will do?
Right. So realistically, to say that we will start seeing it, because let's go through the inflation. You can see that consecutively, food inflation has been increasing. We are supposed to even have a better one because this is the farming season. This is where we have some of produce coming out because of the rainy season, like corn, like tomatoes, and other farm produce are coming. So this is the time we're supposed to even have reduction. So if we don't do something very, very urgent, we may have it more when we get to dry season, when we don't have. So realistically, government must make sure that they work on transportation. So if we have transportation, people can transport those items now, we can have it. So if you ask me now, I would say, well, this year, I can't say, but let's see first quarter of next year, we will start seeing the results of this. When you put up a policy or a framework, it may not start to work immediately. So with this promise, let's see maybe first quarter of 2026.
First quarter of 2026, that's like not too far off though, but it seems a bit long for Nigerians to
it's
wait.
Just,
but it's not far
months.
off. Yeah, that's if. That is if. It's based on the condition if they do what is expected of them. But have we seen any track record of the Federal Executive Committee or Council rather the meetings where it has delivered urgent economic relief to citizens? Have we seen any of that? Can you hear me?
Can you say that again, please?
Yes, I said have we been able to record any? Have we ever been able to see any track record of any positives? Let me put it that way. That's come from a Federal Executive Council meetings that has helped the economy one way or the other that you can remind.
I got worried, and I will tell you why I am worried. Because, when you are bringing framework or policy, you must follow it with action. You recall that during President Muhammad Buhari, we gained some level of sufficiency in rice production. And I'm afraid that has been eroded now, because if you look at the border, it has been open to an extent for such products. So most rice millers and what have you are closing shops. That's something we must be worried about. If you are following a policy, we must follow it down so that it will have enough sufficiency. So for now, I don't see any magic that we can do. We must follow it, and government must also, like I said, if there is a declaration of food security, declaration of emergency of food security since 2003, and this 2023, that's 2 years ago. Immediately President Bola Ahmed Tinubu become president in August specifically, and we have not seen the result as 2025. That's a worry. We need to worry. And what did I say? That when you declare state of emergency or you want to crash price, the only way you can crash price is to make it easy for farmers to actually farm. Is for you to create all round season farming. Is for you to make the supply chain, the food supply chain, also much more easier. These are the things that will crash the food. No matter how people import or what have you, it's going to be a future problem. So the best thing is for us to actually find a way to cushion this effect of transportation. I can tell you, transportation with about 70% problem of food price in Nigeria.
Interesting. And also, I want to take you up on something you said now, that because the government has looked at the short-term measure of opening the borders to food importation, rice millers complaining, or some rice mills have closed. Could you expand on that? Because looking at it on the surface, we seem to have, we can't meet the demands for food. We don't have enough, we're not producing enough food to take care of the population. And that's why the government thought in the best interest to open up these borders to food importation. And now you're saying that some rice mills are closing because of competition from importers. Could you shed more light on this, please?
Right. I think it's counterproductive for you to say because you want to put sufficiency, you're going to open your border. It's quite counterproductive. That means you'll be susceptible and you are going to be looking at global conditionalities. But if it is local and you make sure that your people are empowered to produce more, remember, when people produce more in your local economy, your GDP will rise, people will have more money, purchasing power will be high, and there will be more markets in your environment. We are supposed to be an exporter because we are much more agrarian in nature in Nigeria. So that's why we must not consider opening border. We must consider looking at the anchor border, those policies or framework that can make people to farm, people to go back to farm and also farm in a large manner, not a subsistence farming. We must also mechanize those areas. So these are what we should do that will have long-term advantage to Nigeria. But opening border because of the temporary measure, and you are eroding the gain you have achieved earlier, it's counterproductive. So for me, I think we should be self-sufficient in terms of
But this self-sufficiency you talk about is not in any way helping us to remain sufficient, because Nigerians are still struggling. If we say, I said this self-sufficiency you talk about is not helping Nigerians to be self-sufficient in any way, because like my colleague just said now, the demands are higher and the farmers, the food is not going round. So maybe a little opening of the border would help to, first of all, don't you think we should, first of all, in other words, cushion the effect, try to tame the situation as it is now, ensuring that there's a lot of food going around first. We know it's going to have an adverse economic effect, especially on the pockets of Nigerians, because exporting and bringing it in, whether we like it or not, I'm not an economist, but of course it's a no-brainer. We know it's going to affect their own sales and profits. But then again, if that can be done, just to cushion the effect and ensure that the prices of food will come down, people would have enough to eat, and then in between, you mentioned the Anchor Borrower Program, maybe a new program to help the farmers, grow some more, provide them security. Maybe after a period of time, then the borders can be looked into to being shut again. Don't you think that should be the first thing or the right thing for us to do?
Right, and as an economist, the negative externalities is beyond what we are looking as immediate solutions. And I will tell you now, to even export into Nigeria is very expensive. Remember the excise duty and what have you. So if it is expensive and the price is going to be transferred to the consumer, that's why things are expensive. When you talk about all-round season, it doesn't cost that much. When you talk about mechanized farming, it doesn't cost that much. All you need to do is to encourage and have a framework that will key most governors, most states, and most farmers into this policy and bring it about. If you continue to do it, that means you are also shifting the problem. So the negative externalities is beyond the immediate solution. So you must make sure that okay, imagine 2023. If we have that all-round season farming up till now, we would have something in our silos to even bring out when there is shortage. So bringing in opening border is a negative thing that we must not even think of. We must make sure that we continue to empower people through
Hello, Dr. Ilias.
Availability of fertilizer, yes. Availability of funds. Okay, a country like Ethiopia, their basic business is farming and air transportation. And you can see that they are doing very well because it is intentional. So government should design a policy that will trickle down from the federal government to the state, from the state to the local government. So people can actually key into farming and we can be self-sufficient in terms of food.
Now, finally, Dr. Ilias, from my end, my final question, beyond government policy, what role does the private sector, or should the private sector play in this, particularly looking at logistic companies? You did mention transportation, agro-allied industries and financial institutions. What role can they play in stabilizing food prices in the country?
Right. So most people in the food supply chain or food, industry or people that are engaged in farming. So there's what we call groupage. What we call groupage in logistics. So what we call groupage simply means that when you are doing transportation or shipping of items, don't do it only you. There's a need for you to start coming together so that you will not be paying more for the small space you occupy. But if you are doing it in group, you can easily transport those items. I think we have KB Lagos doing such thing in terms of rice, where KB rice is being coming together in terms of groupage and ship it down to Lagos. So private sector must also bring their game in terms of supply chain, supply chain skill to actually make sure that they can move items from one place to the other without being expensive. That's the only way, and that's why we're talking about CNG. If government can also create a kind of window for Nigerians that, okay, if you're a farmer, these are buses that are available for you from a state to a state to move food items. And that's why we always said that our rail should be functioning well. We should create more so that people can move items through those other alternatives. So it will be multimodal transportation system. We will not rely on using a PMS or using gas to transport our food item. I think that's what we need to do. We must create a kind of a system that will make the movement of farm produce from one place to the other much more cheaper compared to what it is now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, for speaking with us. We look forward to see the possibility of adhering to the presidential's directive, and maybe that will solve all our problems. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.